Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper made the most of his high-profile appearance at the DNC, speaking on the same night as Hilary and fueling more rumors that he may have a place in her cabinet if she wins. Speeches earlier in the week from Michelle Obama, Bill Clinton, and President Obama, as we mentioned, also made major headlines throughout the week. So, David, as you see the DNC as whole, and including Governor Hickenlooper's appearance, what stood out to you? Did he make the most of his opportunity?
Yes, taking into account that like Hillary Clinton, he doesn't have that rare gift of being able to do the convention flow, speak to a convention and a national TV at the same time. And so I'd say his delivery was fine, but it wasn't outstanding. He had a good line that, in contrast to Trump, who's famous for "you're fired," he prefers to say "you're hired." And he's actually someone who has created a business, small business, but on the other hand, nothing he's done has ever gone bankrupt, whereas Trump has 6 bankruptcies. I think he is getting a little bored with being Colorado governor, and he would be a very plausible cabinet pick. If you look at the Secretary of the Interior, that going back to 1980, we've had 4 Coloradans in that job: Donald Hodel, James Watt, Gail Norton, and Ken Salazar. 2 of those actually associated with the Independence Institute, so we like it being reserved for Coloradans. His difficulty, if he gets nominated, is he is on energy development. He's a science-based guy, and he will run into opposition in the Senate from the faith-based anti-science community, which has moral opposition to the use of fossil fuels. And when you tell them that it's safe and we have strict regulations and all that, they run around screaming, because that's like, going to Mecca and saying we're going to put pork on the menu. They're not really interested in hearing the nutritional facts.
Eric, again, David offers up so many different things for you to respond to. Menu options in Mecca was certainly a curveball I did not expect today, but being that as it may, here we have a year like this, and you have great, I'm going to say call it, whether you like him, agree with him or not, you had really great speeches from Michelle Obama, Bill Clinton, and especially President Obama. Do those go as far as they usually would in a year like this?
That's the question. I mean, there's some people who think there was a method to the madness of the Republican convention, and that given that they nominated a reality TV star, they programmed it as a reality TV show where every night ended in a little bit of controversy and a little bit of doubt and a little bit of let's tune in tomorrow to see how this gets resolved. Maybe there is a method to the madness. This was, as I think maybe Greg pointed out, a much more traditional convention. It was much more carefully and professionally stage managed. We heard some great oratory. Obama's speech, I mean, he is a wonderful orator, and there's an elegance to him. Whatever you make of his presidency, and history will judge, there's an elegance to him as a role model, and Michelle fits into that category as well. I actually thought Bill Clinton's speech, yeah, there were charming parts of it. It was thankfully brief compared to the typical Bill Clinton speech, but there was also an off-key, a little bit of a weird factor to it as well. I thought Tim Kaine's speech was adequate, but a single, a double, certainly not a home run. As to John Hickenlooper, I think the real note is he was invited to be a speaker on Thursday night of the convention. I think that's probably more important than what he had to say. As we talked a week ago about Darrell Glenn, the networks didn't really cover his speech, so it's the old line that I used a week ago: if a tree falls in the forest, so what? I didn't think it was John Hickenlooper's finest speaking moment, but that's not what he is known for. That's not the core of his popularity. Lastly, to David's point, I consider John Hickenlooper, for all his gifts, he's one of the most ADD people I know. And in his second term as mayor, he was clearly bored with that job and wanting something else, which turned into a run for governor. He's now in his second term as governor, and he is clearly looking down the road for what is next and hoping there is a ticket to D.C. in some capacity. I'm not sure he was ever really seriously in the vice presidential sweepstakes, but he might be in the sweepstakes for a cabinet position.
Greg, what do you think? Can John Hickenlooper what opportunity can he turn this speech into?
Well, first of all, he brings some advantages. I mean, you know, he did raise a heck of a lot of money for the Democratic National Convention when he came here. He knows all the players, much the way Michael Bennett does. I think he could be a big help to Michael Bennett as a result of this exposure. I do think it puts him in a little bit of a position for a cabinet position, but I'm not positive that that's what he wants. I do believe him when he says that there are things that he enjoys about being governor of Colorado. I think this strengthens him. It makes him the top Democrat no matter what at this point in the state. And so there's some advantages for him to continue to stay and play in this pond. So I'm not 100% convinced that I can envision him as a Commerce Secretary or an Interior Secretary. I'm not sure I see that right now in his future. So it remains to be seen.
Patty, what do you think? We had the rest of the DNC, all these great speeches, and we had John Hickenlooper, not besmirching his, but they weren't nearly in the category of Michelle Obama, President Obama. What stood out to you, and what do you think of Governor Hickenlooper's opportunity that he was given on Thursday?
Well, you know, he spoke 4 years ago, too, at the convention, so this wasn't completely new. It was interesting because he was just on the cusp before the live broadcast started on the major networks. Interestingly, he didn't show the goofy, quixotic charm that we have gotten used to here. Tim Kaine had a lot more of that as the vice presidential candidate. Hickenlooper came across as a solid businessman, but it wasn't the Hickenlooper we usually see here in Colorado, and I think we'll see him here for another 2 years because he said he'd like to finish serving it out. What's more fun than being governor of Colorado? Going and being the Commerce Secretary? I don't think so.